is this part? Don't get to use the gavel a lot. So I'd like to start the meeting by first, j'aimerais reconnaître que Winnipeg est situé sur le territoire visé par le traité numéro 1, le berceau et territoire traditionnel des peuples Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cri et Dakota, et sur les terres ancestrales nationales des Métis de la Rivière-Rouge. Notre eau potable provient de la Première Nation Shoal Lake numéro 40, qui est située sur le territoire visé par le traité numéro 3. So in English, that's, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nations in Treaty 3 territory. With that, Madam Clerk.
I'm not sure if Councillor Mays had requested a leave of absence from colleagues.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that he sent email this morning that he wouldn't be here today, so with that, I move absence motion for him.
All right, so is that in order, Madam Clerk?
It is, yeah.
Okay. So all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Thank you.
And at this point, I would like to thank members of the committee and the public service for accommodating the move of this hearing today. I was requested to attend a community safety summit by the Premier's office on Tuesday, which again, in my role as chair of the Winnipeg Police Board, I felt there was some importance for me to attending that. And thank you for accommodating this meeting today that I could participate in.
Excellent. Thank you for those comments, Councillor Chambers. Madam Clerk, do we want to get into process?
Let's do it.
All right.
In accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw, the process the committee will follow is that the appellant will be heard first, followed by those in support of the appeal. Next, those registered in opposition are heard, followed by those registered for information. And finally, the appellant may return to speak in rebuttal to comments made, but no new information would be permitted at that point. Please note that when your name is called, it is your opportunity to speak. However, you are not obligated to do so. As an introduction, the item on our agenda, item 1, is an appeal under the City of Winnipeg Development Procedures Bylaw 104-2020 at 823 LeMay Avenue. We have some folks participating via Zoom. They are being muted and will only be permitted to speak when called upon. And once you've been heard, you can either remain in the Zoom meeting or leave and continue to watch via the city's YouTube channel. So if any participants are currently watching the live meeting on YouTube, please mute your audio player now. It causes some feedback for us in the chamber. And at this point, if it's the will of the committee, I would recommend we hand it over to the public service for a brief explanation of the appeal.
With consent from Councillor Chambers. Yeah, let's do that. Members of the administration.
Yes, thank you. So this is a property on LeMay Avenue. This is in the St. Norbert neighborhood of the St. Norbert Seine River Ward. This is a property that's approximately 10,000 square feet in area, has a lot width of 60 feet and a depth of approximately 168 feet. Currently, this property contains a one-story single-family dwelling that is about 50 years old. And this property is zoned R1L, residential single-family large, and is located in the established neighborhoods mature communities policy area under the Complete Communities Direction Strategy 2.0. So the application that is before us today is an application to demolish the dwelling and in its entirety and the accessory structures that are also located on the property. In the letter of intent provided by the applicant, this demolition is intended to enable future vehicular access from LeMay Avenue to a portion of land located to the north of this site. There's vacant land that is zoned RR5, Rural Residential 5. And so because of access issues to this property, the applicant is seeking this demolition variance to allow vehicular access to that land to the north. And so that's the reason why a demolition variance was applied for, because there is no building permit for this site. So because Because of that, it requires a demolition variance application. The Urban Planning Division is not supportive of this demolition variance application and had notified the applicant of our decision to not support it. And our decision was appealed, and so under the Development Procedures Bylaw, it comes to this committee for an appeal hearing.
Okay. Any questions at this point, Councillor Chambers?
Yeah, and I'm seeing the letter that was provided on March 28th. I guess this is the decision letter. That was appeal of the decision of the director to reject an application for demolition per development procedures. This will acknowledge your communication dated March 21st, appealing the decision of the director of planning. Let's see. Did the original letter give reasons why the director refused the demolition application?
We notified the applicant on the 21st of March via email, stating that we would not be supporting this, that there was an opportunity to appeal our decision and to let us know if that is the wish is to appeal it. Later, in a separate email, we had briefly provided some explanation of what the reasons for our decision. And then the report was made available, which goes into it in greater detail.
Okay.
Clerks had also notified the applicant of the decision and notified them that it would be scheduled for this hearing.
And I see those reasons now in the report.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
those are our reasons in the analysis and in issues section of the report.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
I'm struggling to find the exhibits, the report.
So the report would be
Here?
there, or in the exhibits as well, and you scroll
Everything is
down.
in the exhibits.
It's in the exhibits? Oh, okay.
The report that, keep going.
Do you want a page?
I have 20 of 178.
Okay. I just want to
Are you on, yeah, you're on the May 30th date.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, okay. Okay, wanted to make sure I could review the public service report, so I can do that now, thank you. Any other questions at this time?
The only question that I have is, if a demolition permit were to be issued in any circumstance, you know, relative, not only relative to this, but relative to other properties where development or demolition is required, is there timeline set on demolition permits in terms of when they're to be initiated and when the demolition is to be concluded?
I'm reaching out to my colleagues in the department for information, and I'm expecting to get some information on that, just so I can provide accurate timelines.
And the reason why I asked it now is that it could be asked in terms of not introducing new information later on.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is this the final, like this is an appeal, is this in terms of the critical path, once we rule today, if we rule today, is this the end of the
Yeah, so the
city process?
per the changes to the Development Procedure Bylaw in 2023, the approving authority is the director. We are the appeal authority, and there's no further prescribed appeal mechanism.
Okay. Anything else for now?
That's it.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So then I would call up the appellant on the application. I have the appellant as Mr. Winthrop. Would you like to come down, or would you like to cede the appellant spot to your legal representation? Okay. So we have Mr. Kevin Toyne. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
All right.
And yes, Madam Clerk, you did pronounce that right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Councilors, thank you very much for having me. My name is Kevin Toyne. I'm a lawyer at the law firm Hill Sokolsky Walsh, LLP. I'm here on behalf of the appellant, the numbered company owner, and Mr. Winthrop, who I'm sure you recognize him up in the gallery. Before I start, I'll just say two brief things. First, I'm headed to the airport in the not-too-distant future, so if I leave not long after I'm finished, it is not intended to be a sign of disrespect, but WestJet intimidates me, so I will be on time for my flight. And the other point is just to remind both of you that I had prepared some material in advance, and I had submitted it. Hopefully you've had a chance to let's take a look at it. Perfect. I wasn't sure if I should bring hard copies or not. I'm a bit of a Luddite, so I've got my hard copies. Before I begin, do either of you have any questions for me in particular, or should I just go through my submissions in the 9 minutes I have left?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So, councillors, from my perspective, there's really 4 issues that I'm going to draw to your attention, only 3 of which I'm going to spend any time on. The first relates to the topic of reasonable apprehension of bias. Councillor Chambers, we addressed that in our materials. I'm not going to say anything further on it. You're here participating, which suggests to me that you've concluded that you're able to participate. Park that issue. The other 3 issues that I want to spend a couple of minutes on are who actually made this particular decision, what grounds are actually available to deny a demolition permit application without an associated building permit application, and whether or not any of those grounds are present. So, Councillor Chambers, you had asked about the reasons for the application being denied. There's the 2 documents. There's the email exchange between Mr. Winthrop and Mr. Galston on March 21st that sets out 2 grounds. That's the day that the decision is conveyed to Mr. Winthrop. And then 5 days later is the administrative report, which is currently before you, which contains additional reasons. And I'll get into those reasons in a second, but at this point I just want to flag the appellant's position that none of the material before you, aside from what I assume are form letters generated by the clerk's department, there's no indication in the materials that this was actually a decision made by the director. And Section 46 of the bylaw, which was amended last year, delegates authority to the director. So I've talked about that in the materials. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but that's an issue that from our perspective, and I'll submit to you, is dispositive of the appeal. The wrong person made the decision. Now,
So
oh, sorry, yes.
Doesn't that, according to your argument, make this meeting moot?
No, it wouldn't make it moot. The wrong person made the decision. Therefore, you should grant our appeal, is the arguments that I'm making. Now, you may not like door number 1, which is fine. I've got door number 2 and door number 3.
Okay.
So door number 2 is what are the grounds that are available to, whether it's Mr. Galston, if he made the decision, whether it's the director, if she made the decision, what are the relevant grounds? Well, Section 46 sub 3 of the bylaw sets out those 3 grounds. The bylaws in our materials, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but the first ground is whether or not the granting of the demolition permit will create an undue detrimental impact to either the maintenance or the use of adjoining properties. That's the first ground. The second ground is whether or not granting this demolition permit is going to cause a visual detriment to adjoining properties. Those were the grounds that were the traditional grounds before the bylaw was amended last year. When the bylaw was amended last year, the third ground was added, and that's the one that talks about increasing pressure for new land uses that are inconsistent with secondary plans or Winnipeg on the subject site. So those are, in my respectful submission, the only 3 grounds upon which the director can reject a demolition permit in these circumstances. If it's going to cause undue detrimental impacts, maintenance and use of adjoining properties, visual detriment, or if it's going to increase pressure for new land uses that are inconsistent with other planning decisions on the subject site. That's what the bylaw says. Now, if City Council had decided that there were going to be other criteria that should be considered, it was open to you and your colleagues to put that into the bylaw. In your wisdom, you elected not to. So my respectful submission, the bylaw has to be interpreted as it is, not the way it could have been or the way that the public service wishes it was. So if you accept my submission that those are the only 3 grounds upon which a demolition permit can be denied, the question becomes, are any of them present in this particular case? Now, Mr. Galston's report, which I do have here somewhere, the administrative report has 9 bullet points that address these 3 criteria. Now, because I'm working off a paper copy, I can't tell you what the page number is electronically, so hopefully you've got that there and you can follow along. It's on pages 5 and 6 of the report itself. So the first 2 bullet points in the report are talking about, or sorry, they should be talking about undue detrimental impacts for maintenance of use of adjacent properties. That's what this criteria is supposed to be about. But when you take a look at those 2 bullet points, that's not what's being addressed. So rather than considering whether or not there's actual detrimental impacts, and not just detrimental impacts, but undue detrimental impacts to the maintenance or use of other properties, there's simply an assertion, oh, it's going to create a vacant lot, and vacant lots are bad. In my respectful submission, even if that's true, insufficient and irrelevant. It doesn't address what is supposed to be addressed in that first criteria. The next 3 bullet points 3, 4, and 5, talk about visual detriment. And again, as I've set out in the briefs, in our respectful submission, there are no visual detriments that are going to be created if the structures that are currently present on 823 LeMay are no longer present there. And I've set out why that is. All of the neighboring properties either are looking out at other vacant spaces or looking out at roadways. In my respectful submission, that is insufficient to say that an additional empty space out of one of their windows is creating a visual detriment. And we make the point that the visual detriment that seems to be the concern of the public service is the preservation of the forest that's directly to the north of 823 LeMay. Now, that's not a relevant consideration under the way 46 sub 3 has been drafted. And then the final criteria that's set out in the bylaw talks about increasing pressure for new land uses on the subject site. It has absolutely nothing to do with potential development immediately to the north. Linking those 2 for the purposes of denying and delaying the granting of a demolition permit is improper in my respectful submission because it is entirely irrelevant. If City Council wanted to give the director the ability to use prematurity as a ground to dismiss, City Council would have done that. If City Council wanted to give the director the ability to say no to one of these development applications for a demo permit because there's associated development intentions on a nearby property, City Council could have done that. You chose not to. So under the bylaw that you passed, there is absolutely no basis upon which the demolition permit should have been denied. And denying the demolition permit for the purposes of, buying more time to save the forest in some way, shape, or form is not appropriate. It's an irrelevant factor. So in my respectful submission...
Is that impugning motive?
To who?
Well, I don't know. I just heard.
Oh, council, I guess.
I guess I just heard a rationale on why something was done or wasn't done.
Sorry, so the submission I'm trying to make, maybe I'll take it up to like a 30,000-foot perspective.
Okay.
The bylaw says you've got 3 doors upon which you can say no. None of those are present in this circumstance, at least in my submission. You may disagree, but it was still denied for some other reason. And the reason that's been said is, well, it's premature, this other development with respect to this land, where a variety of individuals are trying to preserve a forest, is still ongoing. What I'm saying is that consideration over there is entirely irrelevant. So I don't think I'm suggesting motive. I'm simply saying
Okay.
you've got 3 doors over here, none of them were selected. Door number 4, wrong door, grants the appeal.
Okay, because I thought, maybe I must have misunderstood because I thought you meant that this would have been denied because of that. That's what I heard, and perhaps I misheard. But I think you've clarified your position.
I hope so. Any other questions based on what I've said?
Well, no, I think you've clarified that, that I think you're not saying that that's the reason why. See, you mentioned it. You mentioned the LeMay Forest.
Yes.
The first time I heard you speak, what I recall is that you saying that it might have been like denied because of that.
Oh, sorry, yes. So all of the factors with respect to the LeMay Forest, whether DAS at 9, 2024 is approved, how fast it's approved, are we going to say all of those things
Right.
are entirely irrelevant? And it's clear that some or all of those other aspects with respect to the forest are what led to this decision, at least based on a plain reading of the material from the public service. Now, of course, you may disagree, but that's the position that's being taken by the appellant.
Okay, but motive is why does someone do something? And I think you've just reconfirmed that the why is the forest.
Yes.
Okay, so that's impugning motive because you're saying, why did someone do this? They did
Sure.
it because of that. Okay.
So I want to go back to door number 1.
Yes, sir.
Where it's talked about the proposal to demolish the dwelling without approval of a new land use will result in the creation of a vacant lot on the May. And in my time on city council, in terms of demolition permits, it's always been suggested that a new land use or development plan would be in place so that council or those decision makers would know what is replacing that demolished house. Was that provided in terms of the demolition application that was submitted to the director?
So, Councillor Chambers, that's a good question. The application, there's actually 2 documents that were part of the application. If you've got the bigger brief that I've sent, it would be at tab 1.
Okay.
And I'll show you, again, and it's not page numbered, I'm sorry. But in that application, Mr. Winthrop sets out what the plan is if and when the demolition permit is granted. And that's on the second page. It's subheading 3. It says proposed development.
Page 3.
No, sorry, page 2, section 3, proposed development. It's about a third of the way from the bottom of the page.
And that's based on the big binder of information?
Yep, the big binder, tab 1.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe 15, 20 pages in if you're looking at the PDF.
So what I'm seeing here has 178 pages.
Yes, that's the document. So it's about 15 to 20 pages in. You'll see something that looks, it's got Mr. Winthrop's letterhead on it.
Okay?
It has a date of, oh, sorry, Ms. Clark.
I'm sorry about that. So on our exhibits file, it should be page 43.
43. Getting there. Just 1 second, please.
Yeah.
And I want to be respectful of your time, limited time.
So I'll also note, I'm sorry about that, our timer is functioning, but our beeper that alerts us when time is out has been sent for repair, so
Okay,
Do you want me to make a beeping noise, Madam Clerk?
I think it would have already happened.
Okay, I'm at page 43, and you're saying it is,
If we're looking at the same page, about it, in the middle of the page, 2, location, below that, 3, proposed development.
okay. Location, proposed. Remove single detached dwelling and accessory structures on 823 without the issuance of any new building permits in order to create a vacant lot that will enable access from a public right-of-way to the abutting landlocked parcel. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the doors, 1, 2, 3.
I hope it turns out that it's a good analogy.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's for
good.
me.
Yeah, well, I don't hear, when there's 3 doors, I don't hear motive being impugned because we have choices. But anyhow, I guess you could still impugn even if there were just 3, but, okay, so part 9, demolition permits. The administration is citing 104-220, right? I'm looking into the administration's language here. And rationale being, I guess, not what you submitted earlier in your presentation, being that, well, recommendation, the Urban Planning and Design Division rejects the application to demolish a dwelling without a building permit for construction of a new building or renovation of the existing building or the establishment of some other permitted use being completed within 1 year. In the case of 1 or 2 family dwelling, and in other cases, 2 years from the date of the commencement of the demolition as required under Part 9 of the bylaw number 104-2020. We agree this is the bylaw we're talking about?
Yes.
That has all the doors?
Yes, so
Okay.
the top of page 5 of the admin report, Mr. Galston sets out what I've called the 3 doors.
Okay.
So it says analysis and issues, and then he's helpfully excerpted section 46 sub 3 of that exact bylaw, Councillor.
46 sub 3.
The authority approving must not.
Because it's, my past experience with residential demolitions, and I know we recently changed the rules, but I recall this as being one of the rationales for not granting demolitions. The last time I voted on a residential demolition, I voted to not demolish because the long-term plan for that site was to make a parking lot out of it, which is not what I wanted to see there, long-term. So I don't understand why it's different.
So what I'll try to do, if you give me 30, 45 seconds. So at the
Yeah, I've asked the question, so
Yeah,
please
so-
go and answer.
so-
You're not on a timer anymore,
Oh, those are dangerous words to someone like me.
except we know you're on a schedule.
Okay, so at the top of page 5, we've got the excerpt of 46 sub 3. Sub A.
We're in the
sub-
admin report, right?
We're in the admin report,
Okay.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
So sub A, sub B, and sub C is what I was referring to as doors 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
So the way I have understood the administration's position is this concern about development on the lands to the north. It's unclear what's happening, so this is premature, is fit into sub C, which is what I call door number 3. The increasing pressure for new land uses that may be inconsistent with higher level planning documents. And the point that I'm attempting to make is that the way in which the bylaw is drafted and the way in which the admin report that brought that amendment forward was drafted was that the increased pressure relates to the subject site. So the pressure that we should be talking about would be the pressure on 823 Lemay. So the idea is, on a go-forward basis, 823 Lemay becomes a drive for access to the lands behind. That's what Mr. Winthrop is saying in the application, and that's what the related DASZ document, which is in one of the other tabs, is talking about. So what I'm attempting to do, Councillor, is to say, if there's concerns about what may happen on other properties, that's an irrelevant consideration because it doesn't fit within door number 3.
So are we making this correlation or jump because the owner of said property also owns the property to the north? If a person owned 823 Lemaine that didn't own the property to the north, would we entertain a demolition permit of that individual without development plans in place?
If, in that hypothetical, let's use the next door house, 819. Okay, so if the owner of 819, and maybe they're one of the speakers who's going to speak against, I don't know, let's say they want to knock their house down and not put anything up there. They make the application. Mr. Galston, one of his colleagues, would review it. The director should make the decision. The director says either yay or nay. If one of these 3 doors, if those criteria are met, then the director would be within her rights to say no. If those criteria aren't satisfied, sorry, go ahead.
So you're saying the only mitigating factor is the fact that the property to the north is owned by the same person that owns 823 Lemay, in terms of door number 1, 2, and 3?
What I'm saying is because there's common ownership in the facts that are before you, the consideration that the development of those other lands that's still working its way through the system. And until it's worked its way through the system, this application is premature. That wouldn't be an issue in the hypothetical for the next door neighbor because they don't own any of the lands behind them. They haven't made application for a DASZ. So if there was a report before you saying why it shouldn't happen, presumably this particular ground that we're focused on right now, like can you look just at the subject site or are you looking at other surrounding areas, it shouldn't be an issue. And presumably it wouldn't. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you.
Okay, so page 5C.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm not used to be called sir. Would not increase pressure to approve a new land use that is not supported by policies in Plan Winnipeg or any secondary plan that applies to the subject site. So we agree that that's in the bylaw, that's our shared common ontology at this point?
Yes, that's door number 3.
Okay. And then the last paragraph in that, the presence of a vacant lot on this block of LeMay Avenue would put pressure on approving access to the vacant lands to the north as a site to accommodate development that has not yet been approved. As such, the demolition is inconsistent with Part 9, Section 46.3, Clause C of Bylaw 104/2020.
That's what Mr. Galston's report says, yes.
Okay. Presumably you disagree with that.
Very strongly.
Okay.
And if I haven't made it clear why, let me try again.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Galston.
We're not legal counsel. We're legal.
Oh, no, of
people,
course.
yeah.
So I'll hopefully I help you in a way that you grant what I'm asking for. But even if I've only helped you understand it better, so be it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Mr. Galston says, look, you've got these 2 properties. You've got the property that has the house and the garage, and maybe there's something else on it. I haven't been there in a month or so. Whatever's there. You've also got directly behind it and a number of the other houses along LeMay, the other large parcels of land, common ownership. Yes, sir.
It's actually 2 parcels of land.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
so you've got the lands behind it. Okay. There's a live DASZ application with respect to those lands directly to the north. What Mr. Galston is saying, and I think, and he'll tell you if I have got this wrong, until we know what's happening with that property, is the DASZ being granted? Is it not being granted? What's the development agreement going to look like? Until we know that, this application is premature. What I'm trying to say is that is entirely irrelevant because the way the bylaw is worded, the focus is potential development of the subject site. So the lens that's been taken by Mr. Golson and his planners is too broad. It's premature because there's potential development on neighboring property. I'm trying to say that the focus has to be on the subject site. And having a private drive to enable access to the landlocked lands immediately to the north is not something that's inconsistent with our Winnipeg, a secondary plan, any other higher level planning documents. And to the extent that it's the same owner, that the purpose of that drive may serve purposes in that other development, that's not a relevant consideration under 46 sub 3 sub C, because it's not the same property. So you may disagree with me, but hopefully I'm making it clear where I'm coming from.
I don't want you to have that impression that I'm disagreeing. I'm trying to understand your argument. So what's the text?
So if you go back to the top of page
Part
5.
9, 46, Part 9, Section 46(3), bracket 3,
Yep.
Clause C, bylaw 104, 2020. That's what I'm looking for right now.
The presence of any vacant lot on this block of LeMay Avenue would put pressure on approving access to the vacant lands to the north of this site to accommodate development that has not yet been approved. As such, the demolition is inconsistent with Part 9, Section 46(3), Clause C of Bylaw 104, 2020.
Okay, so I'm reading the bylaw now. So,
Yeah.
but you made a broader reference to the bylaw
Yes.
about, I think, intent of the bylaw?
So if you take a, if you've got the bylaw in front of you.
Yes.
Okay, go down to C.
Would not increase pressure to approve a new land use that is not supported by policies in Plan Winnipeg or any secondary plan that applies to the subject site. Oh, okay.
So the point I'm trying to make, I've tried it a couple of different ways. The focus of our view is that the planners, the director, and this committee needs to focus on the subject site. Taking that bigger step back and saying, look, this is premature because DAS 9, 2024, no one knows what's going to happen with that as it works its way through the system.
But again, to my point, if it's the individual subject site that we're looking at without any development plans or just to put a road or an empty lot there, I mean, doesn't that suffice as a decision to refuse?
I would say no.
Okay,
Now, the planners say yes, which is why we're here.
correct.
Yeah. So part of the issue before you, I think, is just an issue of interpretation of the bylaw. Like what sort of a lens should we be looking at? There's disagreement on that. But even once you've resolved that, there's still disagreement about whether or not that particular factor is here that would open up one of those doors to allow the director to say no, and for you to say, well, but wait a second, that's present. Okay, well, in those circumstances, we'll uphold the director's decision.
Yeah. And so, again, in terms of looking at the application that was submitted, looking at and trying to keep independent thought from the property to the north, the properties on either side would not have a development or a structure between them.
That is correct.
Vacant
Yes.
property.
Yep.
So that goes back to B, would create a visual detriment to the adjoining properties, and would not have an undue detrimental impact on the maintenance and use, no, it goes back to B.
I think that's more of a B than an A.
B, yeah.
And maybe another way to look at this, Counselor, is the mere fact that there's space between those properties, at least in my respectful submission, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a visual detriment. If we're talking about the type of vacant lot that really is an eyesore, perhaps. But that's not what's been suggested. There are empty spaces in that neighborhood that are not eyesores. So the mere fact that there's some additional space between 819 and 827, I guess it would be, maybe 831, whatever the municipal address is, just because there's additional space between the two of them doesn't necessarily mean it's a visual detriment. And and I don't think this is in any of the materials, 46 sub 2 of the bylaw says what the director's supposed to do. Approve, deny, or, of course, there's always a door number 3, approve with conditions. So to the extent that there might be a risk down the road that there could be some sort of a visual detriment that's not currently present and that's not intended to be present, given what the application says, a condition or two are sufficient to deal with that, as opposed to an outright denial. At least that's my submission. Yes, you may well disagree.
Well, you're sort of swaying me on the B there. An empty tooth? An empty lot?
Yeah.
But isn't that making the opposite of your case?
No, what I'm attempting to say is
You're saying it doesn't look good now, so we should demo it?
no. Sorry, that's not the point I was trying to make. Okay. Vacant lots aren't always an eyesore.
Yeah. And the director can put conditions on what that empty lot must.
So, Counselor, if do you have the admin report still in front of you?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Flip back to page 3. There's a couple of diagrams here. Sorry, not diagrams, figures. What am I saying? Figures.
Page 3 of admin report, which is around 20 and everything, right?
So page 3 of the admin report, maybe that would be like page 41 in the record?
Yeah, I got page
Okay.
3 of the admin report, yeah.
Okay, so we've got the subject property. It says subject site, right? It doesn't reflect the split zoning it's got, but it's showing you where the site is. So as you can see behind the site, there's an area where you've got trees, and there's areas where you don't have trees. To the right, east, there we go, sorry. You'll see that there's another area where there aren't trees, just to the south of the school there. So the point that I've tried to make in the materials, perhaps a little bit clumsily, is just because you have a space that doesn't have a structure or isn't covered with trees, doesn't necessarily make it an eyesore. I'm sure if you haven't heard it yet, I know that Councillor Chambers has heard it from local residents, there are people who want to preserve those empty spaces in the vicinity of this property. So the mere fact that something is an empty space that doesn't have a structure doesn't mean that it's creating some sort of a visual detriment.
Well, that runs counter to what I've argued many, many times about having a positive pedestrian experience with buildings to create that continuity. Obviously, I don't know how many times I've seen that in planning reports. On B, it's really it's an aesthetic preference on whether or not we think a building or an empty lot is nicer or not nice. Because I like buildings. Like, generally speaking, the last demo I said, I really liked the person that was applying. However, I really didn't want to grant the demolition permit. because it would create an empty site.
Yes.
And what I wanted to see were plans.
Yes.
So I'm having trouble with this one. I'm having trouble with your specific arguments to the bylaw. And I'm hearing what you're saying, and I guess you're saying not necessarily create something that is an eyesore. And from my perspective, what you're talking about is an eyesore. So I feel like maybe you're talking in favor of rejecting the appeal. Because if I like buildings, and the last time I was presented with this opportunity, I really liked and recognized the work of the person in the community. I said, I'm sorry to do this, but I would like to see plans, associated plans with this building. So, I mean, I guess you're convincing me that maybe we shouldn't grant this appeal if I want to be respectful of bylaw, outside of the admin report.
So it's open to you to.
Well, I know
Yeah,
that.
it's like you're the decision maker, right?
Yeah.
If that's your decision, that's your decision. The point I'm trying to make is this isn't actually a visual detriment. If you disagree, you disagree, we have our remedy, so be it. But the point I'm trying to make is the fact that it would be an empty space.
Do we have photos of this?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Google map.
Is there a photo in the package? Would you describe with words the current site?
It's a house with a garage in the back. It's got some split zoning because as I know Councillor Chambers will be aware of this, but a lot of these properties received an additional strip in their backyard, so it has an elongated backyard, at least compared to the part of the city that I live in. And a lot of the houses in the neighborhood, I think, have a similar look to them. And if you take a look, and if you still have that figure number 1 in front of you, I don't know if you've got it. It's a ways down LeMay Avenue.
It's right in front of Le Grave.
Yes. Yep. So Le Grave affected basically runs if it was extended. Yeah.
Just want to follow everyone.
So you're page 19 of 178.
Page 19. Or 178? 178, admin?
19 of 178, page 19.
It's a big document. So what would be, just to your point, now that we're
Yes.
isolating to the site,
Yes.
in your opinion, what is highest and best use of this site? We're supposed to be.
Yes, you're-
I like your argument that we're supposed to be debating the merits of this application for
Yep.
demolition, and now I'm into the bylaw. I don't like the aesthetics of an empty lot. That's my opinion.
Yes. Yep.
I think you are stating that you like the aesthetics of an empty lot.
I'm saying that I think you should like the aesthetics of an empty lot. My personal preferences are irrelevant.
Okay. So is it out of order for me to ask for your personal preference?
So,
Because, I mean, I've stated mine.
yes. So, if we do take a step back, and maybe this will help, even though we're supposed to be focused on this subject site, if you do take a step back,
Wait. Now we're doing,
no, just
we're conflate, we're.
No, just
we're
hang
gonna
on.
conflate things.
Just hang on.
Okay.
Just stay with me.
You're breaking logic.
So, if you take a step back, there are pre-existing land use rights for that property to the north. There is an application that will eventually be coming through the system to change those land use rights. There's a DASZ that's working its way through. It hasn't made it.
You said it's immaterial to your
So, just-
submission, or
just-
should be to our
just-
consideration,
just-
right?
Just hang on.
All right.
Okay. What has been said in the material that was submitted is that the purpose of this demolition and the reason why there isn't an associated building permit with it is the property is intended to be used to provide access to that landlocked property. So the house and the garage would come down, and a private drive-style access would be there in its place to allow access to those lands. So to go to your question, what's the highest and best use? Well, right now, it's the zoning, part of it, I think, is, the back is what, R5 in the back?
I can ask you the
Yeah,
information later.
Yeah, so, look, it's.
For Mr. Winthrop.
Yeah, so it's zoned residential. You can have driveways on properties that are zoned residential. That's the plan. So, and the reason that I said just to take a step back is because taking that step back is informing what the intention is for the subject property. So the subject property, if this demo permit is granted, is the structures come down, access is made available to the landlocked properties to the north.
But I thought we
That's
weren't,
what the intention is.
I thought we weren't talking about that today. I thought the point was we're not talking about that.
Or not, but you asked me what's the highest and best use
Right.
of the land, and I'm trying to say that the intent is,
No, but in terms of the site.
in terms of this site, is to turn it into a driveway so that the owner of the lands to the north can access those lands.
Okay.
This site, Mr. Winthrop effectively said, "Dear city, let me knock down the house, let me knock down the garage, I want to put a driveway in, all the way across the property."
Okay.
That's basic, that's effectively what he's asked for.
Okay, and so having a road to nowhere, well, not nowhere, but having a road to a place that has not been improved, not approved, we should not be considering that. We should be considering this site only. So B would not create a visual detriment to adjoining properties. Looking at a road in the middle of two houses, from any version of cosmetics that I've read about or maybe even feel in my heart, feels to me that B fits for no. On C, would not increase pressure to approve a new land use that is not supported by policies in Plan Winnipeg or any secondary plan that applies to the subject site. That applies to the subject site.
If I could just jump in while you.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah, while I'm trying to work
So-
this out.
Of course, our revenue to the city of Winnipeg is done through property tax assessments. This house is demolished, a road goes through, how is that land taxed? Again, from the highest and best use.
I don't practice municipal taxation. And some of your
But
colleagues may
it's
wish
a
I didn't practice
consideration.
municipal law at all.
It is a consideration in terms of, setting a precedence on something that, again, the city relies on taxation revenue to provide the services, and by putting a road in here kind of defeats that purpose.
So that may very well be true, but 46 sub 3 doesn't talk about that as one of the criteria.
Okay.
Now, maybe 46 sub 3 needs to be amended. That's up to you when you're wearing different hats.
In our wisdom, you said earlier, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
Thank you
the
for that.
phrase that we've been taught to use.
I know, I
So
appreciate the compliment.
So if I can go back to a comment that,
I've got one. Okay. C,
yes,
I'm rereading it.
yep.
Would not increase pressure to approve a new land use that is not supported by policies in Plan Winnipeg or any secondary plan that applies to the subject site. Are you saying that our city's plans, that the ideal use for this site, independently of everything else, would be a road? Just a road in between two houses? Like that's what the plan division would support? House, road, with no other plan? Because that's another process happening somewhere.
There's large swaths of the city that are roads and access through private drives to properties. to go back to a point you made a moment ago, I look across a road at a number of neighbors. The houses on either side of 823 LeMay look across LeMay to houses that either have municipal addresses on LeMay or on Le Grove.
Right. But are
right?
they just roads, though? Like, from a cosmetics perspective?
So you can see road and you can see driveway. So I think maybe the point of departure on this like related issue is the fact that there's a road or the fact that there's a driveway, that's not a visual detriment. That's to borrow the phrase from the planners, that's not an eyesore. There's roads and driveways all over the city, and rightly so.
A house for a road. Okay, and A, maintenance and use of adjoining properties. Okay, yeah. In terms of the site itself, I don't know. I don't see A as being particularly
No.
relevant, but I think B and C certainly are.
Is there anything else that either of you need, any questions for me or anything else that I can do to try to help you on B or C?
You know, I guess everything is open to interpretation. I mean, that's why we have a legal system and lawyers. You know, I'm, you know, very much looking at, you know, all of the things that would impact, and again, creating a road to, as Councillor Allard has stated, nowhere at this point in time, creating that visual.
Kind of your, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Oh, no, fair enough.
That's
Yep.
fair.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm happy to retract.
That would not create a visual detriment to the adjoining properties. And again, it's not just the ones on either side, but it's also the ones that are on La Grave that would be looking straight down as
Yeah, I think
well.
it's 1 and 2, maybe
1 and
3 and 4 as well. Yeah, yep.
And then, you know, the other argument that I brought in terms of, you know, this is the process by which the city receives revenue through taxation, and demolishing a house or derelict homes on a house that are demolished are subject for tax reassessment. And again, it's lower revenues to the city. So, I mean, it's all of these big picture things that we also have to keep in mind in terms of an application like this, although they're not, they're spelled out in different areas of development. It's not a door 1, door 2, door 3 here, but it's all of those decisions that we have to make at a higher level as well. Recognize the impact that it could have down the road. Pardon the pun.
I guess the only secondary plan applying to this this subject site, would be complete communities, or are there others?
I think, is it, John, it's just complete communities, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So what would complete communities say about the site?
Complete communities, hang on, has 823 as being in a mature community, or is it recent? Oh, right, because the RR5 zoning to the north is a recent community, and this property has a, what is it, a 40-foot strip? In the back that's got the RR5 zoning. So it's primarily mature communities with a little bit of recent at the back. And I think we addressed that towards the end of the brief. Hang on, if you just bear with me, I'll tell you what paragraph that was. Okay, so I don't know where it is in the record. I'm sorry, but maybe in the 40s? It's page 13 of the brief, paragraph 46, where we talk about that a little bit, Councillor Allard.
13 of the brief?
Page 13 of the big brief, paragraph 46.
Okay, hold on.
I guess my 10,000-foot question now is on C, because
Yes.
I'm hearing your argument on ABC.
That's a good
So
start.
Put A over there.
Yep.
So I'm on B and C. So what does complete communities say about increasing pressure to a land use that is not supported by policies and plan in Winnipeg or a secondary plan that applies to the subject site? What's the zoning on the site?
R1, R5? Yeah, yeah.
R1?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess this is a question for the administration on what they would see as a demolition of a single-family home relative to what the planners may want to see there in the future based on those two planning documents that seem to be the guiding documents. Is that what I heard? Just complete communities in Plan Winnipeg?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any other secondary plan that would apply.
So we have to use those as our guiding documents.
So, and to your point, 46, paragraph 46, the property is located in an area designated by our Winnipeg 2045 and Complete Communities 2.0 as mature communities.
Yes, sir.
Coastal land to the immediate north is a recent community. As noted in the city's development guidelines for mature communities, they offer some of the best opportunities to accommodate infill, and you're saying they, referring the two properties, or three properties, because Tosha Lands is actually
The
two separate
two
properties.
parcels,
Yeah.
yep.
And then, so this third property, they offer some of the best opportunities to accommodate infill development and increase the densification of the city, and that will help meet the city's climate change goals. The location of the property in this particular residential neighborhood supports the granting of a demolition permit. It is not its denial on some irrelevant and unlawful basis. So in one section or one where you're saying all three properties offer the same best opportunities to accommodate an infill, and then negating that by saying, okay, in this particular instance, we got to demolish a house.
So you may disagree with the argument I've made on just keep the really narrow focus. So we've also tried to address some of the planner's arguments if you're taking the broader focus. And that's what paragraph 46 is about. Look, given where this land is and if we're going to take that broader lens, I say you don't have to, you may disagree. If you're going to take the broader lens, well, what's the plan there? Look, there's two different perspectives, right, of course, but the one that I'm here representing is we're going to put a development here, the 2,500 units and whatever it is. This is going to be one of the points of access to that infill development. So if we're taking the broader lens, mature communities, recent communities, climate, all of those things that go into those bigger picture decisions, we're saying that actually supports this, as opposed to the city's position, which, at least as far as I can tell, is if you take a look at those higher level planning documents, it doesn't support it.
So in terms of the development, I'm looking at Avenue de la Digue that would run east-west behind the homes on LeMay Avenue, right up to Villa Maria Place. Is that Place or what is that? Yeah, Place. So in terms of egress and ingress and egress, does it necessarily mean that you have to have a third street, like in terms of Le Grave punching through?
So if we're sort of at that like broader lens, one of the documents that's in the material is a temporary construction easement that was granted that would allow, for a limited period of time, that there are some, the ability to make use of what could be that street being extended. But there's no guarantee that that would continue on a go-forward basis as if development of those lands is approved in some form along the lines of what my client is suggesting. If that's the route that is ultimately selected, there's no guarantee that that east-west road will go in there. Without knowing that, the two parcels to the north of the subject site, they're currently landlocked. There's a caveat on it that says that you can't get a building permit until you've got, I think the language in the caveat to street access, for our purposes, I think it's close enough. If you can't drive in there, you're not getting a building permit. So is it possible that in the future that there'll be east-west access? That sounds great to me, but I'm not one of the decision makers. Without knowing whether or not permanent east-west access would ever be granted, this is a way to seek north-south access. You know, it's not necessarily intended to be a road to nowhere, to borrow, you know, the phrase from, 5-6 minutes ago. It's intended to be a road to a large residential development that's intended to meet the city's housing and climate change goals.
Okay. So to C, you're saying our planning documents would support demolition. And on B,
Yes.
You didn't say what your personal opinion was on whether or not you think it'd be nice to have a road or a house there.
Okay, if you want to know my personal opinion, not that it
Well, I
matters.
do, but, obviously that's up to you.
Okay.
I realize you're, representing someone, so.
Yes. So look, it seems, and I don't usually express my personal opinion because I'll get yelled at.
We're
by the
talking
judge.
aesthetics, so,
No, that's fine.
yeah.
So, as I said, every single window I have in my home, I look at least one road, at least one driveway, back lane. I don't personally understand how some additional space between two houses, because there's a road or because there's a driveway, could possibly constitute a visual detriment. To me, that just defies common sense. Now,
But as a pedestrian, I'm thinking as a pedestrian. You're walking through a neighborhood, and let's say this is, we're only talking about this one, but let's
Only
say
talking
this
about this one?
process.
Yep.
Let's say this process happens 100 times, and boom, 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 boom. There isn't just one, what do they call them, empty tooth, but there's like 50 of them. I don't find that aesthetically pleasing. I don't think I'd find it aesthetically pleasing walking down the street.
no, if every second house on LeMay was getting knocked down, I think that's a different scenario. But the experience of many pedestrians in this city and other municipalities is you walk across roads, right? There's
Yeah,
crosswalks.
but we
You
don't
walk
want,
across-
but now back to our Winnipeg,
Yes.
we don't want that. Anyhow, okay, I think we're good on.
Yeah,
I'm good on
I think
aesthetics.
you and I just, on that, our personal preferences are different. And what I've suggested is, taking a step back from that, it doesn't meet what the bylaw says. You may disagree.
Right, so, but I'm now I'm on the bylaw,
Yep.
I'm on bylaw B, and I don't know. Guess we'll see where the hearing goes.
Any other questions before I,
Are you gonna have time to get to your appointment?
I'm able to stay for a little bit longer. I don't know if I'll be around to do a rebuttal, but I appreciate the opportunity to answer so many questions.
There is something, you said earlier, something about only the director can appeal at the beginning of your presentation.
so the-
What's that about?
So the point I was making there is,
Sorry, only the director, okay, sorry. I think you know my question.
yes,
Yeah.
okay. In the bylaw, the decision with respect to these demo permits delegated to the director. The director is the approving authority.
Yes, and
Okay.
that's new.
Yeah. So this is the director's decision. Okay, so this is supposed to be Ms. Boris's decision.
Right,
What we have in the materials is we have some emails between Mr. Winthrop and Mr. Galston
yeah,
that aren't making reference to the director and using, words like our, we, words like that. We then get an administrative report that's prepared 5 days after the decision has been communicated that, again, is not talking about a director's decision. It's talking about urban planning rejecting, urban planning opinion, urban planning recommends. Not, this is what the director decided. This is what the director had in front of her. We recommended that the director reject this. Here's the other document she had. Councillor Chambers, the director could have sought your input, right? And we talk a little bit about when that's appropriate, when it's not. So there's a bunch of things that say could have happened, and on the materials, there's just no reflection that that's what actually happened.
But doesn't that mean that if the director wasn't the one to make the decision, that we shouldn't be having this meeting right now?
What I would suggest is that if the wrong person made the decision, you should grant our appeal. Because even if the right person had made the decision, they still got it wrong. Now,
Okay,
Yeah,
that's like,
so
you're getting out,
yeah,
I like A plus B equals C, and then understanding what A is and B is and C
Yes.
is. So you're saying,
This is solved
you're
for X.
basically, I'm hearing there was a
Yep.
decision that was made at some point. Later, there's a report.
Yep.
And so,
wrong person made the decision.
but, okay, so wrong person made the decision.
Yeah.
The charter allows you to appeal the decision made by the director, which you're saying may or may not have been made by the director.
So based on the material that we've seen, it looks like it was a decision that was made by Mr. Galston or his colleagues as opposed to the director.
Which leads
that's what
me
we're saying.
back to my question
Yes.
about the legitimacy of this very meeting. Is that not challenged if, by the charter, if the trigger for an appeal is a decision made by a director?
If you agree with me after you hear the other presenters and maybe have some additional questions for city staff, if you agree that it turns out that this wasn't the director's decision,
Yeah,
in my view,
then this becomes like sort of above our pay grade, I think. Maybe you,
I'm saying it's not. Other people may say otherwise. I'm saying you should grant the appeal. You may get other advice from other people to take a different course of action. But I'm saying that if it turns out that the wrong person made the decision, then like, it should have been granted. I'm suggesting that follows. Others may disagree.
so
Then
are
we
you
wouldn't- no, we
challenging
wouldn't
the
have an
process or
appeal.
the decision maker?
well, they're.
all three.
Councilor Chan.
Yeah. So the process, the decision maker, and the decision. We're challenging all of them.
Very, very odd. I mean, yeah. If it's not the director that made the decision, then you can't appeal the decision not made by the director.
Yeah.
It's like a chicken or egg thing.
So so for example, when we got the notice of the hearing, I think maybe it was a letter from Ms. Ford, maybe someone in the department says, you know, here's the date you've got to appeal the director's decision, right? Because of course the bylaw says, well, it's the director that's supposed to make the decision, right? So for us to exercise the prescribed option to challenge, that's the route to follow. We then obtained a copy of the admin report that suggests, at least in our view, when you read it and those earlier emails between Mr. Galston and Mr. Winthrop, that it wasn't actually the director that made the decision. So the appeal's already been initiated. One of the grounds that we've advanced is it wasn't the director's decision. Perhaps after hearing further, you'll conclude that it was on material that wasn't available to us.
What was the ground of appeal if it wasn't the director's decision? I thought that was the ground of appeal for these types of appeals, was
No,
the appeal.
as he said, all three, process, decision, and the fact that it wasn't the director.
So the Winnipeg Charter allows for all of these reasons to trigger an appeal hearing like that? I thought the director was the trigger.
It's supposed to be the director that makes the decision. Based on the record that was presented to us,
Yeah.
it doesn't look like the director made the decision.
But how else would we be here today if it weren't the director that made the decision? Is there any other course of appeal?
Within the city's system,
Yes.
under this particular bylaw, I don't believe so.
Oh, it's back to my chicken or egg. If they're challenging all three, I think they're challenging all three in a context that may be outside of this hearing in particular.
That the director made the decision.
But I don't know. I don't want to impugn anyone's motive, so.
That's my job.
Well, I don't know.
Anything else I can do to be of assistance before I
But the crux of the argument is ABC.
ABC, none of them are present, grant the appeal.
Okay, so the director stuff is not, you said, okay, no, you said if it weren't the director who made the decision, then you should grant our appeal.
Yes,
Why is that?
because the wrong person made the decision.
The wrong person made the decision, so we should grant your appeal.
Yes, that's a separate ground.
But then shouldn't we send it back to the director and make a decision? If the decision hasn't been made, I don't know. Okay.
I suppose that's, if you agree with me on that, then if you think it should go back to the director because the wrong person made the decision,
Well, I don't know about making an arbitrary decision, if a decision may or may not have been made by the right person, and if the hearing should or should not have happened. So, anyway, I think I'm understood by some.
anything else I can do before I go back and sit next to John?
I'm good with questions. Thank you very much for your presentation this morning.
All right, thank you very much for having me. And as I said, if I do sneak out in the not too distant future, it's
Yeah.
not because I don't want to come back and talk, but it's,
Understand?
I can't walk to Halifax. Okay, thank you very much.
Well,
Sorry, I don't plan to walk to Halifax. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so as Mr. Toyne has been identified as the appellant in this situation, we would move on to those in support. Would Mr. Winthrop like to speak in support of the application? No? Okay.
I'm going to stay in the room and get a coffee, if that's okay.
Okay, as long as you're...
I'm in the room, I'm hearing
Still
everything. Yes?
listening?
Okay.
Okay, so next up, registered to speak in support of the application, I have Vicky Poirier joining us over Zoom. So I'll just ask to turn on your video and unmute. Ms. Poirier? Hi, Ms. Poirier, I can see, it looks like you're speaking, but I can't hear you yet. Still, I can see your camera, but I cannot hear anything. You're not muted. Okay, we might want to give Ms. Poirier a minute. Maybe we can figure out if there's something else plugged in or whatnot. I might suggest that we move on to next in support. We have Mr. David Grant.
Same house. Mr. Grant, are you audible?
Well, it looks like Mr. Grant's also having some audio issues, or perhaps we're having some in the chamber. Let's,
I can't hear you.
I wonder if we can double check if everything's all right with our audiovisual here, if the committee would be amenable to,
5
How
minutes?
about
Or-
you hear me now,
minute?
and I'm ready to
Oh,
go.
there you go.
Yeah, there she goes.
wonderful, thank you.
Hi there. Hello, Bonjour, Boozhoo. I am in favor of granting this permit to tear down the house at 823 LeMay because I understand why this is being asked. I understand that this property will be transformed into the northern branch of the intersection of LeMay and La Grève. I recall that this has been explained to councillors in recent months. This will not be a vacant house nor an empty lot. No one at City Hall, especially those in property or planning, should use such rhetoric. When the care home is being built nearby, this new access will be paved and I expect made very attractive. There are far more elderly residents in South Fort Garry, Fort Richmond, Richmond West, and St. Norbert than there are spaces in care home. We need this facility down here. Canada has a new infill plan called the Housing Accelerator Fund. If this federal Liberal plan has no exemption for St. Norbert, and I expect it doesn't, why are bureaucrats standing in the way? didn't the city just lose in court last time they stood in the way of plans for housing? I saw that the councillor involved in that matter is now fully in favor of that development. Council has given near unanimous support for the HAF, the Housing Accelerator Fund. This is not the year to block residential developments. Plans for a care home are even more worthy than that. This is a beautiful, quiet place for a care home. Residents who are able can access the farmer's market and the other amenities
Point of
in the
order.
area.
Point of order.
Those who love walking in the area.
Excuse me, would you just, 1 second, my colleague's raising a point of order.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the demolition of a home at 823 LeMay. We're not talking about a care home. So it's,
Right.
you know, if we can just stay on topic.
823 LeMay is terribly situated at the end of a road. If a truck on icy road fails to make the turn at the dead end, 823 could be in danger of damage or injury. It may as well be demolished for safety reasons. Plus, someone who owns landlocked property should have access to their property regardless of it being developed or not. I am situated at the end of a road. Headlights shining into my living room, getting closer and closer, is a little creepy and scary. We need care homes down here. We're not stupid. We know that this is an access road. He's called it, it's going to be an access road. So grant it, let it be paved. People, even if it does get turned into a park, wouldn't people want access to that park? You know, you didn't buy that land north of 823, so let the developers have their access road. It will be an extension of LaGrave. It's right at the dead end of LaGrave. So LaGrave will just go on one more block. That'll be fine. People who own land should have access to their land. You didn't buy the land as parkland, so I say let the developers have their access road to their small fraction of the land far from the river. Taking that money away that was supposed to buy the park, the LeMay Forest as parkland, and giving that money to a church seems pretty silly to me. Turn it into a road, let them have access to their property, and let them build this old folks' home, a care facility. We need this down here. There are not enough spaces.
Thank you for your
Merci.
presentation.
Very good.
Are you suggesting that every home on a T intersection should be demolished because a truck might plow into them?
No, I'm saying take down that one so they can have access to their land. They didn't say they just wanted it to be green space, you know, just a derelict property. They want access, meaning they want to extend the road to their property. And whether their property becomes a park or a care home or whatever, people should have the right to have access to their property. That's
you.
what I'm saying. I'm
Thank
saying
you.
grant access to their property. It's not like it's in the middle of a block. It's right
I
at the
think,
north end of LaGrave.
I think the question has been answered to the satisfaction of my colleagues, so I'd like to thank
Thank
you
you.
for your presentation.
Merci.
Merci. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So we'll call forward Mr. Grant once again.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you now.
So, okay, we're up and running. Yes. Turn your sound, please. Anyway, thank you. And thank you for giving us the chance to speak. The purpose of the action for which this permit is requested is fairly obvious. It was disconcerting, as I think the lawyer said, to see that the reason for not doing it is because the neighborhood would be ruined with, as my friend pointed out, that a missing tooth makes a smile look strange, and a missing house makes a block of homes look strange. And that would
Mr.
certainly
Grant?
be the case.
I-
On the other hand,
Mr. Grant?
there are missing houses, and there have been for a long time. And generally, those things have been transformed.
I know, it's just-
There's one
can you
near
hear
my
me,
son's
Mr. Grant?
house in Charleswood,
Yeah.
and it has developed a sandbox and a couple of things like that. So the community can use a vacant spot very nicely. And when HAF rolls into place, as was previously pointed out, all those places that are unused, vacant lots, will be built on. But anyway, so as I say, it was disconcerting to use the gap tooth smile as a reason for not allowing this. To some, this seems like, either a mistake, calling it that, or an obfuscation. And this seems to be a violation of the rules. But anyway, that's for the lawyers and you guys to discuss. Personally, I'm torn on development. I like the mix of open space, homes, and businesses across the city that we have now. On the other hand, City Hall agreed in 2023 to put new homes on every bit of vacant land that can be found. I saw this done several years ago behind my son's home in Lord Roberts. At the time, we in the South Osborne Residents Group were against those developments. We wanted to protect the hundreds of trees and acres of tall grass. The city decided in favor, instead, of 3-, 4-, and 5-story residential buildings. Looking back, the new buildings are beautiful and there remain ample places to walk and bike. Most of us are pleased with the development. I have friends on Lord, and until recently, the couple on LeMay. I commiserate, but I expect all who seek it will find much wild land for dog walking and hiking in the remaining acres north of LeMay. Just as a comment, my last comment on this, some people speak as if city taxes are pure profit for the city. In general, it's far from it. That if the house is gone, if we have that gap tooth smile, one house is missing on LeMay, that home's demands on garbage collection, police and fire and so on are reduced. That property will still pay city taxes every year. The reduction in city taxes is intended to reflect the change in actual cost of that property going from residential to vacant. So just a reminder that the net effect on the city's bottom line should be pretty close to zero if your mill rates are done correctly, and I'm confident they are. So thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions? No. I just have a clarification, Mr. Grant.
Thanks. Oh, I can't hear. Oh, I turned this up.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I turned your volume down because I didn't want to interfere.
So I wanted to thank you for the, I guess, the overture, but I don't know that we would be what we would consider ourselves friends. I just wanted to point out that I have, other than seeing you at council meetings, we don't see each other very often in social settings. I think we met once at a function somewhere.
Sure, and I didn't mean to be presumptive there. I just finished spending an 8-hour day or 6-hour day in a courtroom, and the two opposing legal teams kept referring, the only way they referred to each other is my friend, and then they point.
Okay. I didn't want anybody to think that we had,
Correct.
I don't know, our relationship misrepresented, so I wanted to make that.
Early business.
Yes,
Really-
yes, appreciate your submissions to council. See you again soon.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right. I do not have any further representations registered in support of the appeal. I believe it's just media in the gallery. So I would proceed to those registered in opposition. We have some folks joining us via Zoom. I would call forward Stacy Gossman.
Can I interject? Is it possible to speak to the city's legal counsel?
We cannot go in camera for a community
For a public hearing?
But we could try to get a hold of someone if somebody is available if you took a break, but
I thought we had to go to the CAO's office.
Well, so we can't have privilege because we're in a public hearing. It's just some of the arguments that were made earlier are, I guess they're beyond the scope of this appeal, so let's carry on.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Gosman, it looks like you're unmuted.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please proceed.
Perfect. Thank you to this committee for allowing me to speak today. I would like to start by taking the opportunity to thank the Urban Planning and Design Division for the sound decision already made to reject the application to demolish the dwelling at 823 LeMay Avenue. I urge this committee to uphold this decision. The proposed demolition on this land raises concerns under Section 46, subsection 3A, B, and C of the bylaw already mentioned. While all three subsections are relevant in this case, I would like to focus on Section 46(3)(c), which states the demolition must not increase pressure to approve new land use that is not supported by policies in Plan Winnipeg or any other secondary plan on the subject site. It's worth noting that the applicant submitted a 178-page document as an exhibit to this demolition application appeal. This document discusses the actual land in question, and it does so within the context of the applicant's vision for LeMay Forest. The counsel of the applicant stated the LeMay Forest, which is contiguous land, is not relevant in this discussion, but the applicant has explicitly linked the land together extensively in their exhibit and in their presentation today, so I will address this as well. While there are several concerns, I would like to call out point 4 labeled notes on page 3 and 4 of the exhibit, which reads, all structures will be removed on 823 LeMay regardless of any outcome, any other option being exercised or associated total lands. 823 LeMay is required for access of equipment and vehicles to the landlocked parcel for either the development of a discretionary approved land uses or non-discretionary lawfully permitted land uses. And number 2, several attempts over an extensive time period have been made to no avail in securing long-term approvals and or agreements to use the extension of Avenue de la Digue across city-owned lands Plan 6905 to access the landlocked parcels to avoid removing at this time the single detached dwelling at 823 LeMay. I believe that this is the exact activity that 46(3)(c) aims to protect the city neighborhoods from. Firstly, it's worth pointing out that the dwelling at 823 LeMay is not derelict. The current assessed value is $436,000, an increase of $57,000 from the last assessment. It is also currently occupied, and therefore demolishing the house for no reason other than to leave an empty lot to be used as a road for heavy equipment will evict these residents from our neighborhood. Additionally, there are no current other fully empty lots in St. Norbert. Secondly, the land behind the dwelling known as LeMay Forest was landlocked when Mr. Yayapour purchased it. It was a known risk when the purchase was made, and the city should not be pressured into approving this application because of his choice. Nor should the city be pressured into allowing vehicle access via the city-owned land shown on Plan 6905. Finally, no other development applications, including rezoning, have been submitted for the LeMay Forest lands, and therefore there's no need to get equipment and vehicles into the state space as stated, other than to contravene Section 46(3)(c), including the destruction of culturally and ecologically important lands while active discussions are ongoing regarding a viable alternative. The St. Norbert residents have been working hard to secure funding to purchase the LeMay Forest. As a result, sufficient funds are now available, and in March 2024, Mr. Yayapour received an offer to purchase the LeMay Forest. The offer was based on a credible 2024 appraisal of the land. And while the offer was not accepted, this matter is not closed. In summary, the 178-page document attached to the appeal is just that. It contains an idea on a piece of paper, and lots of ideas don't pan out, and it should not sway the committee's decision, especially when considering Section 46(3). The fact that all of the information about LeMay Forest was even included in this appeal should be a warning. Based on these considerations, I respectfully urge the committee to uphold the rejection of the demolition application of 823 LeMay. Thank you. I can take any questions.
I don't know, Councillor, did you have one?
Yeah, I just want to go back to your, you made a comment about including the land to the north in this application. Could you just go over that point again one more time, please? Because I think I tried to make the same association in terms of if this were a different property that wasn't part of that land.
Yeah, to me, it felt like, especially after hearing counsel speak for the applicant, that they were saying that the land that is contiguous to the property in question is irrelevant to this discussion, but I believe it is relevant discussion, and I believe they think it's relevant to the discussion, or they would not have mentioned it at all in their exhibit, and they would not have mentioned it when speaking to the committee today.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess having legal counsel make respectfully submitting a delegation and us having no access to legal counsel, here we are to figure out the law. But I think what's before us today is that I think we're right on the demo, no demo, and I think we're right on the bylaw. And so we've got A, B, and C. I mean, that's where I'm at, Council Chambers. That's what we have to rule on today. Everything else, though it was mentioned by yourself, by legal counsel, by the administrative report, by the correspondence, what we're ruling on today is A, is this going to hurt the other adjacent properties? B, is it aesthetically bad to have, I guess, a street between two houses? That's kind of where I'm being pulled right now. We're going to have a long day probably. And then C I think is, I'm still not quite, I still quite haven't landed on C, which is, I think C is basically that the director should not grant a demolition if that demolition will not help with Winnipeg's development plans. So that's the one where I'm not sure on C, but I'm relatively sure on B. What is your, I guess, what's your opinion? Do you think aesthetically, or did she already answer?
She answered C, yeah. I think she did.
What was the answer? I'm sorry, I missed it. What?
Sorry, I think,
Apply
are you
the
asking
pressure.
about A and B?
Well, yeah, what's like,
Yeah.
in one sentence, what do you think on ABC, all other considerations aside, because I think that's probably our legal duty without having had the opportunity to speak to legal counsel on this. That's probably what we're supposed to be doing today. So in one sentence.
So while I chose not to address it in my prepared notes because I knew that others would be, I believe the demolition should not be approved. We've seen everywhere in the city what happens with vacant lots if it's just left overgrown or being used as a path for construction vehicles, or if the demolition is not completed in a manner where all the equipment or all of the construction material is cleaned up properly, it does become a fire risk, a visual deterrent, and just a blight on the neighborhood. So I believe that the appeal, the demolition should not be approved just on those things alone, although I chose not to address them.
Okay, I think so. I think I heard you on A and B and nothing on C, I think. That's fair.
Yeah, sorry, I just, most of my prepared remarks were about C, so I didn't think you wanted to hear more.
I'm still struggling with C because it's a much broader picture, but.
Well, like you said, I am also not legal counsel, and
Yeah.
so, I'm reading into it, whatever I'm reading into it, but I believe the intent of 46(3)C applies here, in my opinion.
Okay. I have no further questions. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Next up.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Ms. Gosman. So next up, joining us via Zoom, we have Anne Lowen in opposition to the appeal.
Apparently it's Ann Lavin.
Lavin, oh, I apologize.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi. I'm Ann Lavin. I don't mind if you call it, say Lowen. And I'm a resident of St. Norbert. And I just want to say that I've heard Stacey Grossman's points, and I completely concur with them, so I won't reiterate them. I'll just add some additional perspective in that I appreciate that this is a very asynchronous process right now, and that does make decision-making difficult. However, we have to take a real and credible path and position, both legally, and I understand your difficulty in that regard, as well as looking forward as a community. Definitely there are not just visual, although for sure there's visual, but safety and community impact complications of an empty lot. And not just an empty lot, but as expressly has been stated, this is meant to be an access point, and whether it's developed or not, shorter or long term, that becomes very much a negative impact on the adjacent properties and even the whole area. And I would just like to point out there's very much a precedent for that. I live nearby in St. Norbert, and we had a property that had to go through sort of a similar process. Excuse me, I'm on grandma time here and I have to take care of my grandson. And the Pollock Island property lost its ability to be habitable, and then it had to be accessed by a road that was unintended to be used for that purpose. And we had many, many years of very unplanned and detrimental activity on the property because of that. And it took a long time to turn that around. And increasing access in such a fashion could create additional problems for the neighborhood. And that absolutely needs to be taken into consideration. I think the timeline on the development is very uncertain whether it would even proceed. And therefore, although I agree it's quite subjective about the 0.3 increased pressure for new land use that are inconsistent with other goals, I think it's unequivocal that the intention of this application and this process would be to increase that pressure. And I would therefore completely concur, as I said, with Stacey's comments, and agree that this permit for demolition should not go ahead. Thank you for the opportunity to give my comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Chambers. You have questions?
No, thank you, I appreciate it. So in terms of C, can you expand a little bit on the comment or the would not increase pressure to approve new land use that is not supported by the policies in Plan Winnipeg or any secondary plan that applies to the subject site?
Right, well, so it is a rather subjective point saying increased pressure. That would be, someone would have to decide subjectively, I guess. Perhaps there are objective measures. I don't know about them as a lay person, but making a road into an area that is otherwise landlocked, for which there are expressed ambitions, desires to further develop whatever one thinks about those development goals and objectives, would seemingly increase that pressure. And that is not what we're supposed to be doing in approving a demolition permit of a house, if I understand. So I'm saying I'm opposed to I'm in agreement with the denial of the permit to demolish the house. If I cannot use too many negatives to get my point across, because I do think, to me, quite clearly, this increases the pressure to develop new land use. I don't know, I'm a layperson, I don't know what our Winnipeg and other goals and objectives are. However, they have not been clearly stated or agreed upon by the community. And this is, to my knowledge, our chance to state that we don't feel that this aligns with goals and agreements, that at least that we know of. So how can we express agreement? That would be my point.
Okay, thank you very much.
I guess
You're
just
welcome.
Yeah,
to,
clarification.
just to answer the question statement that was made at the end and.
I'll do my best.
in the
I
form-
got a lot of, I got to care for my grandson right
in the-
now, so
in the-
sorry.
In the form of a question, I think that C is basically, if I were to rephrase and try to get into plain English, that demolitions may be stopped if the demolition will lead to development of land that is not conforming to the city's planning goals. And I asked legal counsel, and it sounds to me like the only document governing that are Plan Winnipeg and Complete Communities. They're big documents, fairly high-level language, but it does get to tighter level language in some places in the Complete Communities document. So in terms of C, the question is, does keeping the house help our Winnipeg or does it hurt our Winnipeg, I think?
You're asking me.
No, I'm just saying,
About-
okay. I'm saying,
Well, it
maybe I'm
would
helping
be-
myself with the question is that C is about, is the directors making a decision to either allow the house to stay or allow the house to be demolished based on whether or not it supports the base planning document, the fundamental document of Complete Communities, which is the city council planning document. So in some cases, it could be intensification of land. But I don't think that's what we're ruling on today. So hence
it-
the ABC.
The way Ms. Lavin had expressed it, I think clarifies in the sense that if we demolish this land, it's kind of putting pressure on the city to say, well, okay, we've got this road there now, might as well approve the development.
Thank you for, yes,
Chris
I agree
wants it.
that,
Yeah.
that expresses what I'm trying to express. I think it's obviously challenging. I hope that we're doing what you want us to do by being active citizens. However, we are at a disadvantage by not having the time, the expertise, or the knowledge base of some of the fundamentals that you've referred to.
Thank you.
Complete Communities, are you aware? Page 9, Complete Communities, principle number 4. Builds on existing assets, including natural heritage features, bracket, rivers, urban forests, comma, and parks, close bracket. I don't know. I think there's language there. If you look at the
Yes,
language.
the thing is, it's in a question of interpretation, and developers could interpret that in their context.
Right. Okay.
Good. Thank you.
So I'm not trying to argue in regards to the LeMay Forest itself, because I understand that's a separate process. However, how can we agree with a demolition within the context of trying to build a road and an access point to something we haven't had a chance to know about, or what we do know about sounds very detrimental to our community. It feels so asynchronous as to be lacking in credibility, this process. That's not anybody's fault, but that's kind of how it's playing out.
Yeah. Okay.
Good, thank
No
you.
further questions.
Happy Grandparenting Day.
I'm good.
Thank you. So that concludes all those registered in opposition. I don't believe that there's any further representations in the gallery. And I do not have anyone registered for information. I would just like to state on the record, in case there's any ambiguity, we had received 6 letters in support, and I believe my count was 52 letters in opposition. Those have been shared with members of the committee yesterday afternoon. So those have been dispersed, and they are currently part of the record. So that would include our initial part of the representations. At this point, I would recommend questions to the public service.
Okay, well, I have one on the director decision, and I guess we're getting into really, I'd like to talk to legal, but I don't know. I don't know what the point would be in a public hearing. But I saw in the report the director review, not approve. Like the administrative report says review, and the legal counsel for the proponent was saying decision. So I guess that's getting back into whether we should be having a hearing or not, which is, we're not to confirm maybe with the administration. Today we are, is what we heard from the applicant relatively accurate in that we're ruling on A, B, or C, and whether or not the director was right, the director or designate was right in their interpretation of A, B, C? Like, is that fundamentally at the core of this? Like, am I going down a rabbit hole, or is that actually the question that we have to decide on today?
Yeah, the question is, does it satisfy those criteria, A, B, and C?
Okay.
With regards to the director and decision-making authority, the director delegates authority to designated employees for these demolition applications under the changes to the to the development procedures bylaw, which was last summer. In addition, there's, as you can understand, there's many permits and other applications that come to property planning and development that the director does not personally review, but rather a designated employee does. So that is the case with respect to demolition applications like this.
So in terms of the report, the decision states the nature of the appeal, and then on October 21st, blah, and it states that, and then the decision stated, the Urban Planning and Design Division rejects the application to demolish a dwelling without a building permit for construction of a new building or renovation of the existing building or the establishment of other permitted use being complete within 1 year. In this case, or in the case of one or two family dwellings, or in other cases, 2 years from the date of the commencement of the demolition as required by Part 9 of Bylaw Number 104, 2020. So I'm going to pick this apart in two different sections here. It's talking about the establishment of some other permitted use. So that permitted use would come from, like, because it's a road, would it come from urban planning and design? Would it come from public works? Where would that permit come from?
Well, yeah, so this application, this demolition application, is the reason why it kicks in is because there is no plans for any future use. So that could include consolidating this property, the house at 823 LeMay, with the property to the north, rezoning to one consistent zoning district, or a permitted use such as tearing down a house to build a new one within a year. So that's why that's what this states is that there's no permitted use being applied for at this time. They are simply applying to take down the house with any other.
So in the context of if it were a road that were to be developed for the purposes of it accessing something that's landlocked, would it become a private road?
It would be a private road. Either it could be a private road through consolidation and a rezoning, or simply to have a common ownership between the property to the north and this house site. So it's just simply I'm walking from one of my properties over to the other, or driving over from one to the other. So that that's. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and then the second part of the question is, again, if a demolition permit were allowed, or the appeal allowed. You know, and I asked the question at the beginning, I'm hoping you have the answer. From the date of permit issuance, there's a certain amount of days to commence, and then a certain amount of days to complete. Is that completion, would that completion be subject to plans, or like, what, it could be continued on as an empty lot for how long before other actual plans kick into place?
There would be no expiration to the demolition, so it could, you know, they would not be required to reapply in 2 years, 5 years, whatever. If the committee wants to place an expiration on, that could be done, but without that, the demolition applications just live on forever.
So the committee can put conditions on the permit if one were to be issued?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And we heard in discussion this morning by, I believe it was one of the persons opposing the appeal, that there's currently somebody living in that residence.
Yeah, I just off the top of my head in my review of this, I don't recall if this was presently occupied. It looks to me, you know, based on the condition of the house and the site, that it is occupied. But you know, we weren't provided with any information about the condition of the house in particular, and so, you know, we assume that it is occupied or was quite recently occupied.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I think I've satisfied my director problem. Reading the consolidated update December 14, 2023 of the City of Winnipeg bylaw number 104/2020. Where's the title of it? I guess it's just a number. But I got to it from the administrative report, and director. So, quote, designated employee, end quote, means the director and any employee to whom the director has given responsibility or authority for enforcing or administering all or part of this bylaw. So I see a complete sentence with designated employee means the director. And I see the next complete sentence, and any employee to whom the director has given the responsibility or authority for enforcing or administering all or part of this bylaw.
Delegation of authority.
So designated employee means the director. You could put a period there and it's still true, or a semicolon and it would still be true. So, okay, so that takes care of my director problem. The question I had was on C. So it's like, that's actually getting into the long-term plans of our Winnipeg. So, I mean, as I've stated previously, I think on the aesthetics, I don't think having a road between two houses is as nice as having, well, as nice is not nice compared to having congruent houses from an aesthetic point of view. And could not the director have denied the demolition just on beat? Like, it doesn't need to meet all three criterion, does it? Where's the bylaw? I don't.
It doesn't state in the development procedures bylaws. I don't believe I checked this a few minutes earlier. It doesn't state that all three status or at least one of. There's no language.
It just says ABC.
In our review and in our report that we prepared for these, we do weigh it against all three.
Okay. So, on C, are there any words for C from the administration? Because I've been struggling with that one, because it's talking about the site. So, and the only plan we have is complete communities in North Winnipeg, I think. So that's a pretty big document. I don't know, I mean, any feedback on C?
Sure. Yeah, so with regards to this specific site, you know, the house that is fronting onto 823 LeMay, we take into consideration what was stated in the letter of intent is that this would be an access point to a future development of land to the north. So this land in question, like that is the subject of this application, is, you know, there is future development proposed for it, intended for it. This is subject to a subdivision rezoning application that has been submitted to the city, but has not yet been reviewed by city departments as is required, and has not been scheduled for a public hearing yet. So there is, with regards to C, where it says increased pressure on a new land use that is not supported, we don't know at this time if it is supported or not. You know, like we are not at that stage with respect to the development both of this land and the land to the north.
So conceptually then, if this demolition were to be approved, it could have an impact on the subdivision rezoning of the lands to the north, from a public perspective.
Yeah, from a public perspective, it may put pressure on, there is a vacant lot here. We want, you know, as was discussed, vacant lots. And I'm not the one to, you know, get into the specifics of this, but you know, hypothetically, it may be that, well, vacant lots don't look good in many cases and don't generate, you know, property taxes the way that an active house might. So therefore, let's get rid of this vacant lot by approving this future subdivision rezoning. That is, you know, one scenario wherein it could put pressure on future development, which may or may not be consistent with complete communities or, you know, other documents.
I'm good.
Yeah, I guess I'm struggling with these two parallel discussions that are happening, because I heard legal counsel say we're ruling on that bylaw ABC.
46.3.
And then I heard the administration say we look at the area. I also heard the legal counsel say things that were not about this particular application. So I'm struggling with the two streams that are being presented to me. But I think to go back and to the administration, and I think legal counsel advises the same, is that we're really granting the appeal based on ABC. Is the director right on ABC or not?
Yes, that's the criteria that any demolition application like this has to be.
So you've said that, legal counsel said that, the bylaw says that. Seems that's what we're ruling on today. Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay, yeah, neither do I. Now that that's satisfied in terms of the, you know, authority given to director and
Well,
delegates.
and I got that from the administrative report, bylaw 104, 2020. That's their development bylaw. As long as I'm looking at the most current version, is it actually December 14, 2023? Yeah? Okay. So I was looking at the most recent bylaw. So in my grammatical opinion, as a layperson, not legal counsel, I think that first sentence
It's quite clear.
is clear that it's the director or designated employees, director, and staff. So, Councillor Chambers, do you want, I don't know, or Madam Clerk, what's next?
Well, is there rebuttal?
Yes, so in this situation, we are dealing with an appeal, so the registered appellant is afforded the opportunity to return for rebuttal. Still see you with us, Mr. Toyne?
No new information?
That's correct.
Oh. No.
Brief point, and it's not new information.
Well, when I hear but, it usually means what you just said is not in keeping with what you're about to say.
Well, I'll try to say it as fast as I can so you can't
Okay,
stop
so
me.
you are out of order. I don't want to have to start the hearing again. This is
No,
rebuttal.
it's not new information, I promise.
Okay, well, that's different than when so it's, you promise?
I promise it's not new information.
Okay. I don't want to start this hearing.
No.
Okay.
So a few moments ago, you raised the definition of designated employee. All right. So the approving authority under the bylaw can be designated employee. So director, or perhaps as Mr. Galston suggested, director delegates to Mr. Galston. Or the approving authority can be the director. And Section 46 of the bylaw uses the word director, not designated employee.
But in the definitions,
It defines what a designated employee is. So later on in the bylaw, if that word is used, everyone knows what's being talked about. It's like in the zoning bylaw. You've got different definitions, so everyone knows what it's about.
but the director hasn't been defined in the definitions. But we know that a designated employee means the director.
Yes, there is
How is that not, something is the thing? It's like a tautology, right? This is this.
So without going too far, all I'll say is Section 46 delegates to the director
46.
and makes the director the approving authority. 46 is not delegating to a designated employee, which includes the director. So if 46 talked about designated employee,
Is the director.
Mr. Galston can make that decision if the director says, you know, Mr. Galston, this is your call. And there's places in the bylaw where it says that. Here, it simply uses the word director, not designated employee.
But in the definitions, a designated employee is the director.
Right. So if the words designated employee were used in 46, it would include the director and anyone she designates to. Anyone in urban planning could be a designated employee if that word was used in Section 46. But Section 46,
What's the point of having definitions for the document
it's used elsewhere in the document.
if the
Designated employees used elsewhere.
but according to the definitions, they could be used interchangeably with a bunch of other stuff.
So Section 46 doesn't use the defined term designated employee. It uses
But I guess
director.
from my read, I don't think it needs to have that from the, I guess, respectfully. Well, your word. More your word than mine.
My friend, respectfully, that's the way we're trained to speak.
No,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's,
Yeah.
it's respectful.
So
Okay,
it's
but-
just, oh, sorry.
So is this something that we can seek legal clarity?
Well, we could, but we'd have to bring in legal counsel. And then the appeal, that's new information. Then we're starting the appeal again. Okay, section 46, you're referring to?
Yes.
Oh, the ABC.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 46 sub 3 talks about approving authority.
Okay, where's that?
Earlier up,
Yeah.
and I don't have it in front of me. I was told I can't use my phone in the gallery, so I had to turn it
So,
off.
so you're saying that despite the definition of director, which also includes designated authority, it's not applicable in 46.3?
Designated employee is a defined term that's not used in 46.
Are you
Director
saying
is a defined
It's not used, but
Yes.
are you saying it's not applicable?
Yes. The word that's used is director, not designated employee.
Yet the definition of director includes,
The definition of designated employee includes director. The definition of director doesn't include designated employee.
I'm a little concerned about the time running and the appellant's opportunity for making their
New
rebuttal,
information?
or just their opportunity to speak to what they've heard. We seem to be
just-
getting into a questions period
Yeah,
again.
I don't know. I just feel like Council Chambers, I'll just read what's the definition. And it's true that it says director under the ABC that we're ruling on today, or not, or doing any other thing on it. Designated employee, quote, means the director. And that's where I ended it in terms of my satisfaction, that the director and the designated employee are interchangeable. But I think we've heard different interpretations, so I think it's up to us to decide. And I don't know that that's material to this decision either. I think that may be a matter for perhaps another forum. But that's to be, that remains to be seen.
That was the only brief point that I wanted to address. So thank you very much, and I will be leaving momentarily to avoid my walk to Halifax. Thank you,
You know,
to all of you.
there are other modes than just walking and flying. That's just joking.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
thank you, have a good, safe flight.
Okay. Well, I don't know, Councilor Chambers, your ward. Do you want to make a motion? Or is it motion time yet? Sorry.
Correct, yeah.
I mean, I'll have some comments for
Yeah.
whatever it is you say. I've got my opinions on ABC and director.
Let me just go through this now, the appeal. Can we take a 5-minute recess and buy a break? I just want to make some notes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, sorry, forgot I was the chair. It's been a while for some reason. So we've had a recess. I had a chance to review all the documentation. The technical problem, I couldn't do that, so I did. Councilor Chambers, did you want to, I don't know, start something?
Yep, I'll move the motion. I move the receipt of public representations be concluded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary, carried.
I move that the appeal be denied and the decision of the Director of Planning, Property and Development be confirmed.
All in favor?
Before I vote, I just want to add some comments to the public record.
Just to be sure, Madam Clerk, is that okay?
Yes, it's okay to speak to something on the record. At this point, too, if you had any,
Like amendments or anything?
well, if you're denying it, then we're good. Sorry.
Okay, so Councilor Chambers has the floor. He's
Right.
almost moved the motion. Now we're going to hear
Supporting comments.
some supporting comments?
Yeah.
Okay, before we vote. Okay, got it. Go ahead.
So there has been much debate today on this property and historically in terms of what it represents for the long-term and short-term plans for LeMay Avenue and LeMay Forest. You know, when I look at up and down the street of LeMay Avenue, there's only one instance of a private approach that accesses the Lorette Academy, I believe it is. Otherwise, the street is very contiguous in terms of homes up and down east to west. The arguments that the appellant's counsel brought up is that we see streets from our own windows. I do struggle with that comment as, I mean, that's common. It's how we access our homes. What we don't see every day is empty lots that, don't have a defined plan in terms of how they're going to be resolved. And that's something that we want to avoid. We have to address its replacement. And, when the council brought up the intended plan is to put a road access there, I mean, I look at the word intended, and that means something that may or may not happen. So for residents to look at a empty lot, waiting for a street access to occur based on plans that have not yet been confirmed or approved, again, that does have an impact on those individuals that live adjacent to that property that have to see that empty lot day in, day out. In this case, I do support the residents who live adjacent to this address and concur with the recommendations or the decision that was made by the public service. When looking at 46.3 and the points raised by the appellant's counsel, I circle around B and C and feel that the public service made valid points on this demolition to be refused.
Okay. So I'll be supporting Councillor Chambers' motion. I was intrigued by the argument that the designated employee is the director, and in my mind, if the subject is the object, then the object is the subject, and I guess it's up for debate within the rest of the document whether you're talking about the subject or the object, which earlier in the document were the same thing. So I'm satisfied on that front. On A, I don't think there's a big impact to the neighbors. On B, I think there's definitely a negative cosmetic impact to the streetscape, because right now you have, and this becomes a matter of, I think, preference when you're talking about aesthetics. I think it's nicer to have a house and then a house and then a house rather than having a house and a road and a house. So I think the director is right on B and not approving a demolition. And I guess on C, I'm still on a maybe, but it's okay to say maybe when you have A, B, and C. So I don't think I grant A, I grant B, and I give a maybe on the C, because I think that's a larger discussion, and perhaps that's the discussion that was happening, despite us ruling today on a very specific thing, which is whether or not to grant a house demolition or not, without submitted plans. And I'd point out the last time I made a decision of this nature, the reason why I did not want to grant the demolition was that I did not want to have a lot in that state forever. I wanted to see submitted plans and a building, and we don't see that here. But I think the directors met B, and that's why I'm supporting this motion.
Call the question.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried? Sorry, I voted in favor for the record.
I move that the appeal hearing be concluded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried?
For the public record, please note that the committee has made a final decision on this matter. This is not subject to further appeal.
I move adjournment.
So moved by Councillor Chambers. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried.